On your Wednesday episode of Locked On Raptors, we're back from the All-Star break and looking ahead to the stretch drive for the Toronto Raptors. What are some of the things we're most interested to watch or keep track of? We'll dig into that. Plus, is All-Star totally broken? Is it worth fixing? Are there ways to fix it? We'll talk about it with someone who was there over the weekend in Salt Lake City, Katie Heindl. It's a Whatevs Wednesday. Let's get to it. Thanks so much for hanging.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? Welcome to episode number 1346, I think, of Locked On Raptors for Wednesday, February the 22nd. I'm your host, Sean Woodley. I've been covering the Toronto Raptors now for 9 seasons on various platforms. You can find all of my work over on Twitter at WoodleySean. You can follow the show, rate it, subscribe, review, all that good stuff over on your favorite podcast apps for free. And of course, we are on YouTube. We got a nice little surge lately of subscribers, just beefing up the numbers on the channel. So please go over to Locked On Raptors, hit the big red subscribe button, join the chorus of folks who have helped push us towards 3,000 subs over there on the tube. Today's show is brought to you by Prize Picks. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code LOCKEDON. That's prizepicks.com, promo code LOCKEDON. More on them a little later on. All right, let's get to it. On today's show, we are going to talk about All-Star and, all the various complaints about All-Star, Pascal Siakam being everyone's best friend at All-Star, the dunk contest, and more with Katie Heindl, who was there in Salt Lake City over the weekend. But we will start with your Toronto Raptors, who are preparing now for the 23-game stretch run to save the season and get into the playoffs, maybe even the 6th seed. And here to talk about it and talk about the things we're most excited to dig into is, of course, Katie Heindl. Katie, how the hell are you doing?
So tired, man.
I don't know if the tiredness is a combination. Of course, you traveled over the weekend, but of course, like the weather stinks.
No,
it's
I didn't
February.
Yeah. On the weekend.
I mean, that's kind of the joy of All-Star, isn't it? Is to not sleep and hang out with your pals. I remember when it was in Toronto, I had a night where I slept in a Tim Hortons because I missed the last go bus back to Oshawa. And so I just hung out in the Tim Hortons after chatting with our pals Joseph Casciaro and Jared Dubin in the hotel lobby till 4 a.m. and then realizing, oh no, I missed the bus back. But that's all fun. It's all All-Star. I got home at like 7 a.m. on that first bus out. It was not a great next day.
Yeah, that's how it goes. That's how it goes. I will say, contrary to what Chuck said, you can have fun in Utah. You can somehow be out till 3 or later in the morning. To your point, maybe that's just in a little crevasse of the hotel lobby with a bunch of friends and like a flask going around. But you can do it. Or maybe you're out at a
speakeasy because
hospitality
nothing's
party,
open past 10 o'clock.
watching GMs get loose in the basement. But I did them all.
We'll have to put like an exclusive paywalled episode where we talk about the GMs getting loose for the people or something like that. That's a future project for us to dig into. Katie, we'll talk about All-Star coming up in a sec here, but let's dive in now. The Toronto Raptors tomorrow night will take on the New Orleans Pelicans if the weather doesn't cancel the game, because it seems like this storm is kind of a doozy that's coming in. But assuming everything's fine, the Raptors will take on the Pelicans tomorrow. They will go for a back-to-back in Detroit and Cleveland. 2 games I'll be at this weekend, by the way, which I'm very excited about. Setting up their final 23-game run here, potentially to the playoffs, likely to the play-in, maybe not to the play-in at all if things go horribly awry here. But we've had a little bit of time now since the All-Star break. Since the trade deadline, Katie. We saw Jakob Poeltl play 3 games with the Raptors. What are you sort of feeling here? We'll start big and we can maybe get more granular in particular things we're looking at going into the stretch run. But general sort of vibe check on the team as we get set here for the stretch drive, which, spoiler alert, I think has the potential to be kind of fun. But where are you at?
Overall vibe-wise, I'll say, I'm not ready to call it on 3 games. It does seem improved, but there's more people than just Pascal and Jakob who like those vibes definitely improved. So I'm kind of curious to see how this last stretch is for that. But I will say, like, big picture wise and totally just like off the top, those 3 games have been great. I'm ready to be like, yeah, Jakob,
Mm-hmm.
that's all we needed. I know that's not the case.
It might be. It really might be.
It's not. But you do see the kind of trickle down effects of like we've been talking about this all season, when it's like you need to there's a myriad problems, but like how about let's just focus on one. And like we have got a big man now in there, and that does free up, whether that's like making, it's easing up spacing, things are less congested around the rim, or you've just got somebody who is fine and happy to be knocked around under the basket, and that doesn't have to be Scotty, that doesn't have to be Pascal, it frees them up to be like kind of loose and free and less bruised and making shots. That's great. And then you have this nice bonus of Jakob Poeltl apparently just being like a lights out shooter. So that's good too.
That floater is, truthfully, having, I feel bad for the way things went with Khem Birch, but when he was with the Raptors, it was all like, man, Khem Birch's floater is money, baby. That's a money floater. And then you see Jakob Poeltl come in. It's like, oh, no, that wasn't money. That's a money floater. And so, yeah, I think, honestly, Jakob Poeltl does stand a chance of resolving more than just the one gaping problem that was with the team, which is they don't have a center. Like I do think there's like a trickle down effect of plopping him into the middle of the floor, having him be that backline of defense. Maybe he covers up for the lesser perimeter effect that, say, Fred VanVleet's been having this season on the defensive side of things. He covers up for the lack of very clear rim protection they've had all season long, putting Scotty Barnes in a position where maybe he's a little overextended, putting Precious Achiuwa in a tough spot where at 6'9" he's asked to play like he's 7'1", and sometimes you just can't do that. He's not long enough at times. I do think there's like a real trickle-down domino effect of Jakob Poeltl arriving, not just the vibes, not just the friendship with Pascal, but just in terms of making the team make a lot more sense, that I'm pretty excited about what this could be over the final 23 games. And look, it's all varying degrees of excitement, right? Do I think they're going to go on a run and go win playoff series and make a deep run? Absolutely not. It's too far gone for that. The seeding is not going to be in their favor. They're going to have to go on the road, most likely if they make the playoffs, to either Boston or Milwaukee in the first round, and that's going to be really, really difficult. But I still think there's plenty of joy to be gleaned from these final 23 games, and more importantly, I think information to be collected about what the next Raptors team is going to look like and who on this team is going to fit into the long-term plans. Is there a particular player, Katie, who you are most intrigued to watch down the stretch here as far as how he fits in, as far as how these next 23 games are going to dictate his future with the team? Obviously, 3 guys we thought might get traded at the deadline come to mind, many of whom are free agents in a couple of months. Where are you at in terms of like guys of intrigue for you down the stretch here?
Probably Fred, honestly. Yeah. I think in terms of fit and role, to see, if this can if that trickle down effect we both mentioned can ease some of his shooting woes, and some of the other frustrations I think he's had this season, both like on and potentially off the court. And I mean off the court, probably just in his role, like his larger role with the team.
Yeah.
Because you've now said, you're the front office, you've now said, okay, we're not giving up on this kind of this like long and gangly structure of dude that we want to make our team out of, but we've also realized we need like kind of an anchor point in getting a center, and that could make somebody like Fred's life a little bit easier. So. And I'm generally just kind of curious to see how the caveat is I'm not saying this in that he hasn't been bought in all season, but it does certainly seem like, he's getting ready to negotiate. Yeah. So his position is going to be one of like, well, you've got to make me an offer that compels me to stay. But I wonder how we're going to basically like see him play out these next 23 games, but probably that one the most closely, because the other guys, those fits seem a bit more natural to me. I could see them really flourishing here down this stretch. Like it's an easy year schedule. You've kind of had this natural break of AllStar. You've got like a new guy in the system. They're practicing a ton, like more than we've ever seen them, certainly at like the early half of the season, right? So that just shows me they're trying to really accelerate something. But yeah, Fred would probably be the closest person I'm going to watch.
Yeah, I think Fred's a really intriguing one. Obviously, they have a decision with him in the offseason. Part of it's going to be his decision as well if he opts out. We'll see what happens there. You look, though, around the league at like the cap space teams, and I think you're kind of realizing why the Raptors decided to hold off on making the move with either him or Gary at the deadline. Like, there's just not a whole lot of cap space out there, and a lot of really bad teams that have it, and I don't know if they're going to be the types of teams that can lure a Fred VanVleet or a Gary Trent Jr. And so really, I think they're kind of smart here to hold their cards and see what happens on the sign and trade market and keep the option if things go really well here of keeping them around and paying everybody and then figuring it out, the sort of cap crunch, which will come in 2024 a little bit later. I think for me, I want to dive in a little bit to OG Anunoby and where he kind of slots in because I think he's fascinating. We will do that in just 1 second. We will get to All-Star and whatnot as well, but I find this ever interesting because this team is bizarre, and I don't think I've ever covered a team quite like this in my entire life. We will get to OG Anunoby, why he's intriguing me, and some other big storylines to watch down the stretch. Before we do that, got to tell you about our friends over at Prize Picks, who are making daily fantasy sports fun, easy, accessible, and not a drag to play. I hate fantasy sports. The season-long version in particular doesn't do it for me. I don't like having to set my lineup every day. I'm very forgetful. I procrastinate, and then all of a sudden I've forgotten there's a morning game in Europe that I've totally blanked on setting my lineup for, and then all of a sudden my week is ruined. Not for me. With Prize Picks, it's daily fantasy. You pick 2 to 6 players in any entry, and it's just you against the projections. Are they going to get more or less than their projection for points, rebounds, threes made, whatever it might be? You can put it on your entry. You can do multi-sport entries as well. It's not just the NBA. You can go all over the world with all the various leagues, from disc golf to European soccer and college basketball, women's college basketball, the WNBA, esports even. It's all there. You can make your entries. It's very quick. You can make those entries in 60 seconds or less. You have safe and fast withdrawals for your money and your winnings. And currently they're operational in over 30 states and in Canada in every province except for Ontario at the moment. Download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up today and play daily fantasy sports. First time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code LOCKEDON. If you deposit $100, Prize Picks will give you $100. That is a wonderful deal. Just appears in your account to hang out with your original $100. Don't forget to enter the promo code LOCKEDON at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100 with Prize Picks. And we continue on here with your first listen of the day, Locked On Raptors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, let's dig in here, Katie, to OG Anunoby, because I think for me, he's my most interesting guy to watch down the stretch. It's been a bit of a weird year. He was obviously very good to start the season, deservedly in Defensive Player of the Year conversations. Since about the new year, his role has kind of tailed off. He's become pretty clearly the number 5 option in the starting 5 when he's been on the floor. His usage has dipped below 20%. And for me, I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing because I think OG is a really excellent complementary piece who does role player things as well as anybody in the entire league. And where things kind of lose the ropes a little bit for me are when he gets a little bit, expansive with his offensive creation, which just is not as good as the other guys on the team. And it's just not a good allocation of possessions if you're trying to maximize each game and win every game. I do wonder if the arrival of Jakob Poeltl will, again, sort of have this domino effect where the starting 5 is going to change. I would assume OG is going to keep on starting. Why would he not start when he's back? I think they're going to roll with a Fred, OG, Scotty, Pascal, Jakob Poeltl starting 5 most of the time. There might be matchups where they bring out Poeltl in lieu of the smaller starting 5 we've seen most of this season, but I do think that's going to be the starting 5. I think Gary Trent Jr. with Chris Boucher and Precious Achiuwa and whomever, whether it's Thad Young, Malachi Flynn, that to me comprises a really nice looking bench lineup. And if you can roll an 8 or 9 man rotation, in theory, if Nick Nurse plays ball, you can still have Gary Trent Jr. play starter minutes. You can still have these guys play heavy minutes and not have to overtax the starters, which has been the issue all season long. You get that nice all-star break. You don't want to dive right back into playing them 41 minutes a night, ideally. And so I think if they're able to orchestrate that kind of rotation, where you have Jakob Poeltl as your starting center. He's obviously a low-usage guy. He's not going to demand the ball. He's just going to clean up the garbage for you, get easy buckets for you on the end of possessions. He is a perfect 5th option for a starting lineup, especially one with a lot of high-usage guys. I also think with the extra playmaking you're going to see from Jakob Poeltl in the middle of the floor, that Scotty, Pascal, Yak front court, the way that could leverage the floor, it tilted in the favor of a guy like OG. I think there's a world in which OG kind of rediscovers his early season offensive form in like a more productive fashion, in a bit more of a sort of set role, but like a higher volume role player situation than he's had so far this year, and becomes once again a guy who we kind of figure is a no-brainer part of the core going forward. The downside here is that the issues with overlap of skills and the tension for touches on the floor only gets amplified because there's another good player on the floor. Where do you kind of see this one going, Katie? Because like I could see this one running all sorts of outcomes from the Raptors figure it out. OG finds his role on this team. He's not competing with Gary Trent Jr. for those sort of third or fourth option touches anymore because they're not sharing the floor quite as much. And you see OG rediscover like, okay, this guy's obviously a part of the plans going forward. Or the downside here is things don't go well and he gets moved at the draft for what he might have gotten moved for at the deadline. Where do you see this one going if you're reading your OG and Anunoby related tea leaves, and what's your sort of level of intrigue in his close to the season?
I mean, as somebody who wants OG Anunoby to stay and who has wanted him to find a role, like what I think has always been his role, which is a large role in this team, since he was since he was trying since forever.
Yeah.
It's like he never has had that yet. I think it does like behoove the franchise to figure it out and like figure out a role for him. You've got a really unique skill set, in a guy who you haven't seen play this way the entire time you've had him on your roster. That can also be intriguing for a trade in terms of what the return could get you. But you've also now seen the sure thing of it. I don't think it's such a stretch to like make a set role for him. And like, let's also say that like nobody, maybe not even Jakob, like is going to have a set role on this team. Like that's not really, the Raptors MO right now, certainly under like this coaching staff. So as set as he can. And I think all that is clarity. And again, like that's something that's just been missing from the team so much this season in terms of direction, in terms of like asks, in terms of what how the front office sees this team shaking out. And when you were going over the bench, it's like, oh, right, that feels like much more solid already than what they've had to work with all season. And that's just with one move. Right. And ostensibly there'll be something else in the summer. Maybe that's Gary Trent Jr. But to me, I think, you understand the value that a person like OG gives you on the floor, and like also just like, there's not just like the defensive capabilities, but all the things that you can pull out, presumably in a playoff series in the future, not this year, but in the future, because that's where you want to get back to again. Right. And he makes you a much more challenging team, series to series, which like that's all like that's at a very granular level, that's what the playoffs are about. It's like treating every series like its own, like treating every game almost like its own series, and then treating every series just like a completely unique animal itself, right? I don't know if any of that really made sense, but
no, I mean he's a playoff ass player. It totally checks out. He's a really good playoff player.
I just think you got to you got to do the due diligence on OG. It would it would seem really stupid to me right now to be like, all right, see ya. Yeah,
I mean, I will say going into the deadline, I thought the right move was to try to cash in and get as much in return for OG as you possibly could, considering the bidding war that seemed like might be percolating between a lot of contenders. I thought, hey, maybe this is your time. It's a bit of a proactive move. Maybe it seems premature, but maybe in hindsight, it will be something that you're happy you did. I am ultimately very eager to be proven wrong, thinking that was the thing that they should do. And obviously these 23 games are going to have a big part in to say of whether or not it was the right decision or not to move on from him at the deadline. I still think they're going to get pretty much a similar amount back if they were to trade for him or trade him at the draft, just because that's how things roll. But I would love nothing more than to be proven wrong in thinking that OG getting traded was the move for this team. And if he can just find a place where there's just like this they can just kind of find a copacetic balance of where his role is versus what he wants it to be, that would be fantastic. And it's hard, right? Like, a lot of this is going to be, and I think this kind of goes to the other big question here is like, Nick Nurse, there's a lot on this dude for the final 23 games. He's got to manage the personalities. He's got to convince players to play lesser roles, to come off the bench. Like, I'm sure the conversations with Gary Trent Jr., if that's in fact the plan, have already been happening. And, you know, credit to Gary. He's been super bought in all season long. I don't think he's gotten enough credit for that. He's been super eager to just kind of do whatever the team asks of him and has kind of gone under the radar for that quality, I think. But like, he's got to manage the personalities. He's also got to manage the game plan and like adapt things to Jakob Poeltl. Are they going to change the defense? Are they going to go further into their defense because they have Jakob Poeltl as a backstop now? What does that look like? Are they able to, like, if they do stick with their sort of aggressive style, is the addition of Jakob Poeltl enough to make that style sing the way it has for long stretches in the past, back to 2019-20, 2021-22 last year? Like, this is a massive stretch for Nick Nurse. I don't think it's a crazy thing to suggest that his future with the team is as on the line in the next 23 games as any of the players, and how he adapts with the new players he has on the roster, the new different, you know, versatility they can operate with, I think is going to be super interesting. Katie, any last quick parting shots on notes of intrigue before we move into All-Star talk?
I think Nurse is another one, honestly. Like, you've got a pretty... you got a lesser challenging stretch of games now.
Yeah.
He's been experimenting all season. I know some people are sick of it, but like, I would say this is kind of the time where you should, but also you need to start solidifying things so that people understand their value to the team and, you know, that what their roles are, especially going into the off season. Do you want to make a run? How are you going to coach through that? Like you always say, and it's a great point. Like, he is a good playoff coach. But like, where we've seen him struggle this season is in the regular games. Yeah. I don't think, you know, his trust and his time is totally up with the front office, but I do think that there were more clear-cut questions around him, you know, this season. So I'm curious to watch him too, how he handles it.
It will be extremely, I don't know, interesting is one word for it, nerve-wracking to see if they could pull this thing together. I like the players they have on this team. I would like to see if they could keep most of these guys around and build something like they built a decade ago with a team that seemed like it might be stagnating and yet still kind of had internal growth, figured itself out, and went on a long run of sustained success, which I think ultimately is the thing you got to shoot for here. It's not, can you win a championship? It's, can you have sustained success? And I think that is still on the table here, but these next 23 games are going to be extremely determinative of what that is. Did I just make up a word? Perhaps I did.
I think that's one.
All right. You're better at words than me, so I'll take your word for it. We're going to come back on the other side, Katie. Talk All-Star. We'll talk about Pascal Siakam being everybody's best pal. We'll talk about the dunk contest and fixing the All-Star game, whether it needs to be fixed at all. We'll get to that in just one sec. Before we do that, however, got to tell you about our friends over at Built Bar, who, of course, you know by now, make the best tasting protein bars in the game. I am having a hard time lately with my eating habits. I've been really trying to get back on the wagon of eating good and healthy foods and not snacking late, but I'm having a hell of a time doing it because have you seen the weather outside? Have you seen the world? I like to eat my feelings. Built Bar helps me eat my feelings without having to feel too badly about it. They have really wonderful flavors across the board. Peanut butter brownie remains my absolute favorite. It's totally wonderful, but they have tons of great flavors. Fruity confections. They've got marshmallow. They've got the granola bars as well. It's all there for you. They have 130 calories in your average bar, just 4 grams of sugar and a whopping 17 grams of protein. So you can actually feel good about eating something that feels not good at all. It really is the miracle bar, frankly. Go get yourself some Built Bars right now. They are available at Walmart. Just walk into the pharmacy section, pick yourself up a box of Built Bars. You get the 4 boxes of cookies and cream, double chocolate, coconut puffs, all down the line. They're wonderful flavors. You can go and check them out today. They're also at Built.com. But stroll over to your local Walmart. If you're getting ready for the storm that's hitting Southern Ontario over these next couple of days, you want to stock up on goods, Built Bars at Walmart are the way to do it. Go check them out. All right, we continue on here. Katie Heindl, Whatevs Wednesday rolls on, moving into the All-Star talk portion of the podcast. Didn't know we were going to go 20 minutes on the Raptors, but I find them to be an endlessly fascinating basketball team, and I suppose on this here Toronto Raptors podcast, we should talk about the endlessly fascinating basketball team, With that, though, All-Star, Katie, we'll start on the Raptors-y note. Pascal Siakam seemed to have himself a pretty good time. Love whenever a guy on your team is one of the foremost sideline celebrators and faces during the dunk contest, especially when it's a good dunk contest. Pascal and his camcorder are going to live on forever, it seems. Obviously, Scotty Barnes was there on for the rookie game, the Rising Stars game on Friday night as well. What were your Raptors-y impressions of All-Star? Pascal Siakam's star power, him being everybody's best friend, it seems, him seemingly just like enjoying the concerts and the music and hanging out in a way that maybe you don't often see the All-Stars. What was your read? What was your Cole's notes on Pascal Siakam's All-Star Weekend performance? Because this is what it is. You got to be an All-Star. How was he at being an All-Star, Katie?
I do like how involved they had him be, for the introductions of, I think the BAL's presence, and then also for like the halftime, which was cool. There was like a weird moment where I don't know if he was supposed to speak after they like ran a little montage, but he was cut off, and I was like, oh God, like Pascal. But then he spoke after. I think my main impression was just how like easy and comfortable and confident he seemed all weekend. Like anytime I saw him, whether that's in the like big tangle of All-Star like media availabilities, which is always such a funny free for all. I'd say he really like only seconded Nikola Jokic, who is just like that who just is like does not, doesn't care in a way where I don't mean he's like aloof and too cool. Yeah. He's just like still always is like, what am I doing here? Pascal and like is amazing and just like so funny and endearing for that. But Pascal, I think on the other hand, is just like super loose, super confident. Like just it was nice to see how happy he was there. And then like to your point, it was nice to see how embraced he was in the game. Probably like one of the highlights of the game, aside from like the Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum kind of matchup that happened, which you probably hate hearing, but that was.
I didn't watch the All-Star game, so I'm not worried about it at all.
Watching them pick each other up on defense and have a little bit of fun with it. It's like that's what you want out of the All-Star game, is to just kind of glimpses, I think, into funny player interactions and bright sort of bursts instead of just like this nonstop dragging on event. But yeah, I think it was.
You didn't
great.
like the draft?
I loved the draft.
Okay, you didn't.
Probably
you
the
were
highlight.
One of the people who thought it took too bloody long.
No, it did take too long. Everything. The All-Star game is too long. I think that's my solution. You shorten it somehow. But no, Pascal was good. I thought Scotty, I didn't unfortunately make it to the Rising Stars game. I was getting a tattoo after like a whirlwind day of just like interviewing a million people. But Scotty, super happy to be there. I think played well. I liked how he tried to get everybody in on the celebration when his team won. I think overall it was certainly like a quieter or like less impactful Raptors presence than we've seen in past All-Stars, but I think that's totally fine and par for the course. Yeah. The highlight for me was probably Pascal, like in an ode to Shaq with the camcorder. I was like, where did he even get, like, who picked this up for him?
Yeah, like that looks like the one
somebody
my mom
got that
has.
for him.
Yeah.
Which I was like, I want to know who did, but like somebody definitely got that for him. Him and Giannis. Like Giannis just with his baby all the time, like recording and Pascal beside him. I thought that was great. That's my favorite part of the dunk contest is watching the players get more and more into it at the sidelines.
Just swarming the court ever more per dunk. Yeah.
But I think that's like probably it. Oh, and I guess I'd be remiss if I didn't say that. Was it the Raptors trainings? Like they had some trainers there. Coaching staff in the All-Star game. Good for them.
Yeah. I'm sorry you didn't get vacation, Raptors training staff. Man, you've been working really hard all year. This is your time to relax, but apparently not. Go tend to some ailing Cleveland Cavaliers players if you have to. Watching All-Star Saturday, which I did watch and care about a lot because the dunk contest is great even when it's bad, but it was great. So it was amazing. It just feels like to me, Pascal's kind of moved into the tier of guy that like everybody just kind of respects and likes. And he's just very convivial. He just seems like he's having a good time. He seems like a very good ambassador for AllStar Weekend. And that's just a really nice thing to see. He's a guy who has kind of emerged. His arc has been so unique and like unlike any player I think we've seen in recent history, maybe in NBA history, just from where he began to where he is now, the ups and downs, the sort of nadirs of his career and the peaks that have come after it. Just kind of another sort of feather in the cap to see Pascal kind of move into like the prestige zone of cool all-star guys that everybody likes and everyone agrees is cool. Obviously, I think he kind of has a rep as like the summer runs guy as well from all the Rico Hines stuff where he cooks everybody all summer every year. Very cool. That was a highlight to see Pascal Siakam just be everyone's pal, which is nice. Maybe he'll recruit some pals to Toronto one day. Let's talk quickly about alterations to the All-Star format. This is all anyone can talk about, Katie, is the All-Star game. It was bad. We got to change it. How do we fix the All-Star game? I think I have less strong opinions on this than most. I think the All-Star game is fine as it is. I just accept it for what it is. Sometimes it'll be good, and that's fun. Sometimes it's going to be a joke, and that's also fine. It's not really what I tune in for. If the dunk contest is good, All-Star Weekend's a success in my books. But where are you at as far as, like, you were there, you saw it all play out, the game everybody complained about, and you know, by all accounts, rightfully so. Are there changes you'd make to the format? Is there something you think is just like not working? Curious, as someone who is an all-star aficionado who is there pretty routinely, Katie, what's your sort of stance on whether there should be some alterations and changes to the format, and what would you like to see if there were going to be those alterations?
See, the funniest thing to me is like, I was sort of shocked that, like, for a crowd wise, Saturday night was the busiest. Media wise, it was a bit scattershot.
Okay.
It was the reverse, I'd say, for the All-Star game itself. I can't speak to like the ticketing. The ticket prices may have been out of reach for some, you know, like it seemed full enough, but the energy was a lot different for the All-Star game. Whereas like for media, that's where like the most people are showing up to, which I thought kind of interesting because it's like, I don't know if that's just the name or like the prestige, whereas like the more enticing and exciting events are always on Saturday night because I feel like there's more opportunities for there to be upset, for things to go wrong, for something kind of funny or like amazing to happen, which was what happened with Mac McClung. Whereas in the All-Star game, there's an expectation of like, you already know what's going to happen. The most exciting thing this year, obviously, is like picking the teams, which I think did take a little too long. I liked the pageantry of it because again, like you're letting like LeBron is like a stellar showman, but like you have like Giannis with his like book. When John Morant's not on stage, you know, and just like that, I think, but like that shows you why that's the most interesting or funny part is because it goes a little bit off script. Right. And again, like the All-Star game does not tend to go off script. I think, you know, I don't know if it's a thing where you like have the elam ending in every quarter where you don't have as many quarters. To me, like as someone who was the last All-Star game I was at was in Chicago. That was a great All-Star game. And I would argue non-homerism, Kyle Lowry in that game taking charges again adds an element that's unexpected.
That was the best part of this weekend. It was people really living. I think Fred Katz was like, Kyle actually saved the All-Star game, not the elam ending. The retroactive appreciation of Kyle Lowry being a maniac is very nice to me.
Because he also like roused reactions from LeBron James and James Harden, who were genuinely frustrated and upset by the fact it's like, what are you doing playing defense? It's different to try and get other guys to like buy into that. I don't think money is the answer. I don't think you can say like, especially if it's like, this is a game for charity. You can't incentivize. And like, how much money would you actually have to give to incentivize players when like these are the superstars of the league? Yeah. They're making enough money, right? That's like they're there. They were voted there. They understand that. I mean,
cool mill might matter a lot to like Tyrese Halliburton, who's on a rookie contract, but he's also going to get a supermax in the next couple of years. So like, does it really matter?
Like this year's, I guess, like I saw some stats this morning that it was like the steepest decline across like the board since 2000. And of course, this is worrying. Like it's worrying for the NBA because to them it is an entry point. And I heard some people arguing like about this is While I disagree with a lot of the points, I do understand that like the All-Star game is the entry point for the NBA for a lot of people who don't watch basketball games and maybe will tune into the All-Star game.
Yeah.
And also for people that are like going to come out and watch it because it's like kind of the most bang for your buck. Like, when are you going to see this many superstars like play in one game? So to me, because you can't be like, play harder, play better, play defense to these guys. They'll be like, no, thank you. I don't want to get hurt. LeBron, I think, did get hurt. So that's not good. But I think you have to look at what you can do. Maybe you just shorten it, honestly. I don't know if that's like oversimplifying it, but with how long the game in person felt, I don't think that was just like, it felt long because it was like the halftime show and like all the other entertainment around it. It was longer. Like, it took a really long time. And then at the end, when you have just guys like hucking up like more than half court shots to try and end the game, I think that happened like 6 times.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. Like,
then
you're kind of like, then you are literally, it feels like a throwaway game with the move. Like, they're throwing the ball away, they're throwing the game away. So to me, short.
It's like it devolves into Houston Rockets ball, which nobody wants.
It just seems like the most, because of everything else, I don't know how or what you would do.
Yeah. Like, I don't think you need to make grand sweeping changes to the Saturday night. I would like the skills challenge to make some sense. I think there is a world in which the skills challenge is good. Think back to 2005, 6, 7, when it was actually like, oh, there's an obstacle course here. They have to throw passes. It's not like you miss 3 passes and you get to skip through it and all that. There's a real sensical tournament format to it. I like it. I think there's a chance for that to work. The Saturday night stuff, I'm totally fine with. For me, I think there's a couple potential solutions to the Sunday thing. You could just like not have the game and instead make that be the end of the in-season tournament whenever that comes in, and have that be like a big blowout. You announce the All-Stars, you say, here are the starters, here are the guys who made the All-Star team. Maybe they're there, maybe they're not, maybe they're having vacation, and then the big main event is the final of the tournament on the Sunday. That would rock. I'd be totally down for that. That makes a big spectacle of it. It makes it into something that maybe people will start to care about in pretty short order, which I think has kind of been the detractors' worry about the mid-season tournament, is no one's going to care about this. Well, if you make it matter, if you make it seem like it's a big deal, then people will treat it like a big deal. You could also, I heard this, I can't remember where I heard this suggestion. It might have been on the Below Post, but the 3-on-3 idea I like a 3-on-3 half-court tournament. I know our pal John Corrales from Locked On Celtics mentioned half-court as an option too, just to prevent the lackadaisical transition defense you often see in the All-Star game. And I like the idea of like using the big 3 format, where you pick teams, you get 3, teams of 3 or 4, and you have one sub or whatever it is, and you make that the way you do it. I don't think the one-on-one idea that's out there would really be all that good, because I think it would devolve into just chucking threes, and I think you'd get a lot of guys not participating because they don't want to look bad by losing in the first round of the one-on-one tournament. They didn't even want to get picked last in the draft on TV, and so I fear the one-on-one would have.
That was the worst part. I hate.
Just like you're fine. You're the best basketball players in the world. You're fine to get picked last. When it happened in the NHL with Phil Kessel, he got picked last, and it was like a cool, funny thing, and everyone laughed about it, and he was drunk, and it was great. It doesn't have to be a bad thing to be picked last. You can make a joke out of it. You're the top 24 players on the earth. I would
argue when he thought he was literally the last person on stage and just moved himself to LeBron's team. He picked himself to LeBron's team, but then he forgot that Laurie was up there.
Right. I don't think there's a perfect fix to it. I think you just got to kind of accept it for what it is and realize that in a league where everyone can watch any game they want now, and it's not like you're only seeing the stars of the league on AllStar Weekend and maybe once or twice throughout the season, it just doesn't have the same sort of luster, and that's okay. Just accept it for what it is. We don't need to spend 3 days relitigating the exhibition game for fun times and add partnerships after every All-Star game, I would say. Katie, any last words?
One more suggestion.
Yes.
Actually, I thought of this. What if you switched the teams at the half? What if you scrambled you just scrambled?
Put all the names in a hopper and we're like, surprise, new teams, Boggle?
Yeah, something like that. You don't redraft them because it's going to take too long. You don't have that whole process. But what if you switched it up?
Just ceremonial trades between the 2 captains.
Well, they offered them trades, but Giannis was like, no, I'm happy.
Way to not yes and that one, Giannis. Yeah. We're gonna I think wrap it there, Katie. This was fun. It was great catching up. Loved all your dispatches from All-Star. Everyone go check out Katie in the freaking New York Times as well. Talking dunk contest. Promote away. What you got to promote other than the New York Times, which I guess is the biggest thing anyone can promote.
Yeah, you can read the story I wrote on the dunk contest in favor of the dunk contest vehemently, I would say, in the New York Times Magazine. If you missed this Sunday in print, that's fine. It's online. I also, from All-Star, interviewed Tyrese Maxey, Buddy Hield, and Jordan Clarkson. Those are all on Dime. I have a sort of a recollective dispatchy thing that I wrote in a fugue state at Basketball Feelings. I'll probably have another one of those, hopefully a little bit more coherent this week. I think that's it for now, but I'll have some more stuff coming out of this past weekend.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Katie. It was lovely having you. Everyone go check out Katie's stuff. You can find me at Woodley Sean on Twitter.
I did an interview also on NPR. All things considered. So, and Spud Webb is on that too. And we are both, of course, talking about the dunk contest.
Incredible. Everyone go read Katie's stuff. Find me on Twitter at Woodley Sean. Subscribe, follow, rate, review the show for free wherever you get your podcast. It's much appreciated. And let's get ready. We'll be back tomorrow. Vivek Jake will be along. We will play a game of what's more likely to prepare for the final 23 games of the season. That'll be fun. And we will round out the week with a look at that Pelicans game on Friday as well. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll talk to you Thursday. What? Yeah, Thursday. Another episode of Locked On Raptors. Bye-bye.